I was asked to do a little survey of what's already going on online to begin my talk. So let me start asking some questions. How many of you are aware that you can go online on your phone, on a pad, or on a computer and watch live news broadcasts any hour of the day, any time? Can I see a show of hands? How many people know you can do that? There you go. And many of you have any of you done that, actually? There. Okay, we got a lot of people. Now, what about live sports? Are you aware that you can go online and watch live sports any time of day? Cricket, curling, squash, whatever you want. How many have done that ever? Okay, great. Now, what about a ballet? Do you know where you can go to watch a live ballet online? On your phone, on your pad, on your computer. How about an opera? How about a theater piece? Shakespeare, Goethe, anybody. We're not there. 20 years ago, a cultural revolution started where everything went online except the people who should have been leading the cultural revolution, the cultural leaders, the performance arts. So here's the state. Wrong way. Here's the state of current global content online. Live news to tell you about the latest conflict and catastrophes and scare you, or maybe tell you what to buy next. Live sports to tell you who jumped a centimeter higher, ran a little faster, scored one more point, playing the exact same game again and again and again. But if you want dramatic arts and entertainment, you get dead film or dead TV series. Why do I call them dead? Well, they're not live. You're either alive or you're dead. Film is dead. Recorded television series are dead. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of people on a regular basis, people just like you, have intimate, powerful personal reactions to dead material on screens. Empty patterns of light and sound. There are no actors there. There's just light and sound. The actors have gone fishing, shopping, they died, they're having lunch. You're not sharing an experience with them. Okay. It wasn't always this way. There was a time when performance arts were at the heart of society and the heart of Western civilization. In Athens, what we call in the West, the cradle of our civilization. Here. I pushed the wrong button. Every year in April, they had the tragic festival. And the leading citizens of Athens would compose and perform in their own tragic plays. If you're familiar with any of the tragedies that we have from classical times, Aeschylus wrote The Persians, which was performed at the festival. At the end of the festival, all of the citizens of Athens could vote on which was the best play. Aeschylus won the award one year for The Persians. One year it was Sophocles. He wrote Oedipus Rex. He won there. But both of these men were leading citizens of the city. Aeschylus wrote The Persians when he returned from fighting in the Persian War as a general. And 2 weeks later, you'd find him in the Athenian assembly, debating what to do in the aftermath of the Persian War. First he treated it dramatically, then he treated it rhetorically. Sophocles, in the Oedipus Rex, it starts with Oedipus agonizing over the fact that there was this terrible plague going on in Thebes. The bodies were piling up in the streets, and his people were begging him, how can we save the lives of our loved ones? In that same year, that same kind of plague had stricken Athens. And so, 1 week in April, Sophocles performed that story here, and 2 weeks later he was in the assembly, debating what to do. Theater, democracy, civilization were created together by the Athenians. And we've looked back to them ever since for inspiration. EU Arts Live is about recreating that with the entire global community, which we can do thanks to digital technology and streaming live video. So we're having a platform built so that we will be able to broadcast to the entire global community at no charge to the viewers content which will be live and always live. I keep pushing in the wrong direction, going back. Live. Performances of all kinds. operetta, theater, dance. We're starting to build a network to do that. Why does it have to be live? One of our slogans is, if it's not live, it's jive. If it isn't live, it's fake. If it's a movie, they repeated those scenes over and over again, then chopped them up. Nobody lived it. If you see a performance on stage, they're living it out. They don't get to stop and fix it. Adjust it in the editing room. If it's not live, it's jive. And I think young people want live. They don't want jive. It has to be live because here's Sarah Bernhardt. Over 100 years ago, she was the most famous actress in the world, and she started actually doing short films of some of her work. You can find one here on YouTube of Sarah Bernhardt playing Hamlet. Now back then, you could give people a choice. You could give them a chance to see her in a film recorded on stage. But suppose we had streaming live video at that time, and we gave you a choice. Do you want to watch Sarah Bernhardt recorded on this film, or do you want to see her live on stage? Obviously, people would want live. We haven't been able to give it to you before. Now we can. Okay? And there's something else I want to show you. How far am I? Too far. About live. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That's live. And if the person you love the most in life was dying halfway around the world, and you could have a choice, you could see a film of their last moments, or see and hear them live on Skype, you know what you choose. So, everything we broadcast will be live. Also, everything we broadcast will be interactive. Why? Because when you're in a performance hall, even now, while you're just watching me, you're having an interactive experience. Each of you is creating your own artistic experience of the show. For instance, here, this is very simple. You have a woman. She appears to be trying to get away from a man. Now, one person in the audience is looking at the face of the man. Is he angry? Is he in love? Is he afraid? Another person is looking at the woman's face. Is she in love? Is she playing with him? Is she afraid? Is she angry? Another person is looking at the hands. Is he going to be able to hold on to her? Is she getting away? 1 second later, all three of them change. Another second later, they change again. And from moment to moment, each person in the audience completes the creative process. Passive, single-screen television and film destroys your part of the creative process. And that's why it's not nearly as interesting to watch that stuff on single-screen TV or in films as it is to be there. But what if you can be there and choose? Now you're participating in the process again. So everything we broadcast will be interactive. Another reason it has to be interactive is because this is the future, and anybody who is under 30 knows that a screen is not something you sit and stare at. A screen is something you play with. So we've got to give them the performance arts in a format that is meaningful to them and the future. Open your phone and go to www.artslive.edu. You could do it right now, actually, and then I'd see that you were doing it. When you get there, in the upper right-hand corner, it says, join us here. Put in your name and your email address, and we promise you'll get updates and news about when we have broadcasts coming up. Because we're not yet doing them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I'll tell you this, that's my vision, that's my dream. In 1980, Ted Turner came along, and if you wanted to watch live news, you waited until the evening news for a half hour of tightly controlled news. 5 years later, Ted Turner had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, live news online, or on cable. Now we can do it online. Right now, somewhere in this world, not just one performance arts company, but many performance arts companies are putting on amazing performances, which you don't know about and won't get a chance to see. We can make it possible for them to bring those performances to you and for the entire global community to start sharing something besides news of the latest conflict and catastrophe, or who ran a centimeter farther or faster or scored one more point in a cricket game with 300 points being scored. We can start reuniting the global community, start transforming enemies into opponents who at least understand each other. The American movie actor Harvey Keitel once said, you know, this was back when the Balkan War was going on. I'll just take 10 more seconds. If I could get all the people, the Serbs and the Croats and the Bosnians together on one stage, we'd end it all by the end of the day. I don't know that that's true, but I know that there's much more positive, wonderful things we could share together as a global community through this. So, I hope you'll join us. Thank you.
What can you say, exactly? Good luck and well done idea. Any questions?
No questions?
No, we do. Right at the back. Two at the back.
In the meantime, let me ask you a question. If you could go onto your phone or a pad or your computer at 8 o'clock on a Saturday evening and tune in and experience a live performance of something artistic, an opera, a ballet, or a play, would you do it? You could do that sitting in your own home at no cost to you? Did I see a show of hands? Some of you would. Okay.
So, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. It was nice. And my question is, you mentioned like live sports and etc. News. I have been a sports addict since I remember myself, and live sports, it's very popular, and hasn't it been so that those live arts haven't been that popular because there hasn't been that much of demand? Because for the live sports, there's a lot of demand. So that's why there are many providers for live sports. And for arts,
I think there are two reasons. One, first I want to correct the historical record. If you go back to the 1950s when television started, people went nuts over live theater, live opera and all of that online. In 1952, the first opera specifically composed for broadcast on television was called Amal and the Night Visitors. Everybody watched it. And every season in the U.S., there would be a new lineup of works by the top authors like Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams, and they'd be introduced with hushed tones live from New York. But in the 1960s, the television producers made a choice. We're going to go the way of film, not live. And they put a stop to it and stopped pushing it. Sports continued and became enormous. I don't think we will get as many people to watch live performance arts as watch sports. But if we can get 10% of the sports audience to watch live online culture, that will transform the revenue base of the performance arts. That will be magnificent. You get 10% of the sports broadcast audience. And don't tell me that 10% of the people aren't going to want to watch as much as the ones who want to watch sports. And if we get to 10%, who knows, the additional revenues may allow us to increase the quality so much. If we put George Clooney and Nicole Kidman on live on a Tuesday night, the whole planet's going to watch. See what I'm saying? But I won't pay them $20 million to do it. I say, you'll get paid as much as the other actors, or maybe a maximum 5 times what the other actors paid, because this is theater. And it's not the Hollywood star system. It's not the money system. And if they don't want to do it, I assure you there will be people who do want to do it. I was in a film that Pablo Larraín directed and he's a hot up-and-coming director. He studied theater directing for 6 years before he went into film. Woody Harrelson, one of the American movie stars, did a live movie broadcast from London last year. They know that just like banking is dying, Hollywood is dying. It's already dead. And they're trying to figure out, how do we get in on the digital revolution? What I want to do is come in with the live first, so they'll be coming in after us.
Do we have one more question? That's it. And that's it. Go on, speak.
Hello. First of all, I must say that your song was amazing. And I would like to ask you one question. You said that young people would like to have it live and not chat. Now take the case of a performance. If an artist is doing a performance and the audience is enjoying it virtually, sitting at the home,
Yeah.
would the artist be satisfied? And secondly, in the case of sports, we can see that there are loads of people in a stadium. And the guy in the last row might not be seeing anything which is happening in the ground, but still, he goes there because it's his passion.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that such a guy would be interested in doing the same, sitting at the home?
Let me take the second question first. One of the things that we will develop over time is how to make sure that as you're listening online, you will hear the ambient sound from the performance place. And if you study films closely, you'll find out that sound controls an awful lot of the mood of your experience. So if we can have you hear the sound so that it's as if you're in the performance hall while you're seeing it as if you're in the performance hall, that will grab you. And now I forget what the first question was. But this is just the beginning basis. The idea is we want to do this when performing before live audiences. There are lots of actors who do excellent work in film, even though it all gets chopped off. They don't have audiences there. You may have people who prefer to use it without a studio audience. We think it's best to have an audience, and we'll be looking for ways over time, how can we build in your reactions to the audience's reactions? I'll give you an example. You could have microphones there in the hall which record and play back the audience's applause on speakers. Very softly at first, but based on how many people click on an icon for applause around the globe, they raise the volume of the microphones for the audience. So if more people liked it, the applause would get louder in the performance hall and also when people were listening to it. So there will be ways we develop that in the future.
One last question there, and then can you short answer this?
Sure. We'll try yes or no.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. You said that your platform will be interactive, right?
Yeah.
So will there be some option to interact with, I don't know, with actors or with athletes, or what do you mean by interactive?
Interactive means that you get to choose which camera is main screen. We will also be looking at things like, one thing you can do is you can use the chat box. I've had performance arts companies saying, we'd like to do an improvisation and let audience members online send in messages in the chat box saying, kill the guy, or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So that's another form of interactivity that you can develop that we already have. And we'll look for other ways to promote it.
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Really best of luck.
Good afternoon, my name is John Paval. I'm here with the project called EU Arts Live.
Parce que l'expérience dans la salle de spectacle est profondément interactive. En ce moment, chacun de vous fait des choix de qui vous regardez, quand et comment. Il y a quelques-uns qui me regardent, ou quelqu'un regarde mes jambes, ou les autres gens, les autres panélistes. Et chaque personne fait des choix d'un moment à l'autre. Ce qui veut dire que quand vous êtes dans la salle de spectacle, la création est sociale. Ça commence sur la scène avec les artistes, mais vous l'aboutissez. Vous aboutissez la création. Si on n'avait pas cette idée bizarre qu'un spectacle est un produit qu'on vende pour des billets, on reconnaîtrait qu'on doit payer le public pour venir participer et aboutir la création du spectacle. Et c'est là où moi je suis pas dans la mentalité commerciale. What I'm saying is, in English, when you're in a theater or at a ballet or an opera, from moment to moment in the audience, each of you makes choices about who and what to watch. And they change from moment to moment. Film and television, with their single passive screen, destroy your participation in the social experience of creation of performances. You cannot record a performance. Once you have a recording, it's not a performance. It's a thing. There's no people in it. There's nothing happening that's live. You cannot recreate a performance with the single passive screen of film or television because it kills the audience's participation in the process of creation. But today, now, we have tools, digital tools, which allow us, with 1% of the money that television chains have or films have, to provide you 3 times a day VR interactive programming. Vous avez saisi tous? Si vous avez des collègues ou des amis qui voudraient regarder, nous diffusons cette session sur notre site web. C'est https://golive.artslive.eu. C'est sur des tracts et des affiches là. Si vous avez des amis que vous voulez diriger pour le voir, vous envoyez un texto et ils vont savoir comment nous trouver. Merci.
Thank you.
Could I say something about this? And it may not sound like I'm talking about policy, but I am in a way. If we want to be successful in promoting the performance arts in the future, we need a lot more money. The money is there, but in order to get it, we need to be present on a global scale. A film opens on 3,000 to 4,000 screens to start a weekend. Takes in more money than all the commercial theaters in the West End and on Broadway in one weekend. Now,
But if you talk about we, what do you mean by we?
I'm talking about the performance arts community needs to get online and create a broadcast audience. The model is sports. Over 90% of the revenues for sports comes from broadcasting. It doesn't come from selling tickets in the stadium. And there's sports channels broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because at any given hour of any day, there's all kinds of sports going on. The same thing is true for live performance arts. This planet is exploding with live performances, and almost none of it's online. The dramatic arts and entertainment online is all recorded, which means it's dead, which means it's not us, which means it's not this festival. It's canned, dead material. My passion about the project we have is that Creative Europe has helped us to finance building a platform on which anyone who wants to, with a very modest investment, any performance arts company can start broadcasting. Any group of performance arts companies, any country's Ministry of Culture, which wants to form a federated group of performance arts companies and equip them so they can start broadcasting, we now have the infrastructure which cost us 1% of what film and television infrastructure cost. If we can start building the audience in the global community, which is there, because they're all going to see these shows live. If you go to any small or medium-sized town in any country, when a good show comes to town, it sells out. Everybody loves the performance arts, so there is a mass audience. But it needs to be done with these new interactive formats so people recognize, oh, this is like being in a show. You see what I'm saying?
So then,
and that, if we can do that, then instead of performance arts companies going to governments asking for money, it'll be like sports. If we can create a broadcast audience, 10% the size of the sports audience, the revenues we will generate will be sending money to places like the French Institute or the Goethe Institute rather than going begging for it. the way professional sports is overflowing with money. We won't have as much as them, but if we have 10% as much, that changes the whole playing field, and then policymakers will be figuring out, how do we spend all this money coming in?
So you mean that as long as there is enough exposure, as long as the exposure is big enough for cultural events, cultural creations, that is enough to attract a bigger audience?
Well, the key is networking. Most of the experiments that have been done with broadcasting online are one company at a time. Now, if you're the New York Metropolitan Opera or the British National Theatre, that works. But if you're your typical individual company, even a medium-sized one, you don't have enough reach. But give me 25 medium-sized theater companies, and they pool their audience together. Now you've got a much bigger audience to start to build. So the key is all in international networking and building networks of performance arts companies, and then they can start planning shared complementary programming and doing incredible things. So I would just want to encourage, in terms of policy, thinking in terms of moving, and it's been started. I mean, 5 years ago, they had a big conference here, and everyone was talking about numérisation de la culture. And every now and then, though, I raised my hands and I said, well, how about actually putting our shows online? People looked at me like I was from the moon. Now they're saying to me, that's a good idea, John. What do we do next? So I really think that the future is occupying the internet terrain and thinking about how the policy can get us out there with what we do online, not just websites that sell tickets. Nous, en partie, le but de nos émissions en ligne, c'est de produire dans les gens qui sont jamais venus au théâtre, j'aimerais bien être là. Oui, parce qu'il y a toute une génération. Si vous voyez le public festivalier, ceux qui vont au théâtre, l'âge moyen, c'est comme 50 ans, quelque chose comme ça. Il y a des jeunes artistes, mais il y a très peu de jeunes publics ici. Ils ne connaissent pas. Ils ne connaissent pas. J'avais un tracteur qui travaillait pour moi ces derniers jours et il est parti avec sa mère en vacances. Avant de partir, ce matin, il a dit « Mais merci de m'avoir fait découvrir le théâtre. » Il habite ici en Avignon. Et c'était grâce au fait qu'il travaillait pour moi qu'il est venu à notre émission tous les soirs, la vitrine en ligne à 23h30. Et il a vu des extraits des spectacles et il a appris ce que c'est. Donc je crois qu'on peut atteindre ce jeune public en ligne et puis par la suite, il viendra dans les salles. Moi, j'ai une théorie sur cela. Moi, je pense que l'explosion de cinéma et télévision qui rend le public soumis a changé la psychologie sociale. C'est l'opposé de l'expérience au théâtre. L'expérience fait partie de la création. Mais film et télévision, on impose sur le public. Et je crois que ça a créé une mentalité sociale qui est moins démocratique et moins participative. Je crois qu'on a vu un siècle où on a monté encore et encore et encore l'influence de ces arts dramatiques qui imposent et qui rendent le public passif. Et c'est une des raisons que je suis tellement passionné pour vous tous, et je vous aime tous parce que je sais que vous ouvrez pour cet autre aspect de création sociale qui réveille les gens, qui inclut les gens. Et c'est quelque chose qui peut venir avec plus d'une renaissance des arts vivants partagés par la communauté globale.